everybody. It's another episode of So Chatty with Stephen and Walter, and this is episode number 176 for February the 28th, 2025, last day of February. And I know a lot of you are going to say, where did the month go? Well, it went the same way as January. They just move on, just kind of trot right along. And that's fine. And it's still winter, but we're getting closer to spring. So, speaking of spring, something in springy colors, this little item here I have to show you. Now, if you remember back before Christmas, I was talking about making a wine tote, and I was looking for in the hoop patterns specifically to do that, and I couldn't find any. So I created one by using 2 out of the 3 panels for a regular size tote bag, and that worked out really well. It made a nice bag. I gave it as a matching bag to my hairdresser for the big bag that I gave her, and she really liked it. And it would hold 2 bottles of wine. So Sweet Pea, I think it was Sweet Pea. Was this Sweet Pea? Let me check here. I think it's Sweet Pea. Well, whatever. I don't remember. I think it is Sweet Pea. Had a big sale on about a week or so ago where everything they had on site was $2 Canadian. And I was just looking through all the In the Hoop projects, and I came across this one called the Jelly Roll Bottle Carrier. And you make it with a jelly roll, a few strips from a jelly roll, and you do it in 2 panels. It's very quick. It embroiders a design down each strip as well. But then it got a little hairy because there are instructions for lining the bag, which you do not do in the hoop. You made the handle in the hoop, which is something I'll come to in a second. But I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about this because I'm going to talk about it on the Idiot Quilter. But needless to say, don't get this pattern, because you could make yourself a tote bag for a wine bottle with some leftover jelly roll strips or 2.5-inch strips quicker than it took to make this. And the only thing is, this is going to do the decoration, the embroidery on, the quilting down each side. But you could do that, just on your sewing machine with decorative stitches if you wanted to as well. But the biggest problem with this was the way they had you put the lining in this bag. And this is not the way I've done a tote bag before. Usually with a tote bag, and you can correct me if I am wrong, because you are the expert on tote bags, you make your outsides, you make the lining. You have the lining turned inside out so that the right side's on the inside of the lining bag. You stuff the outside of the bag inside the lining, and so you've got right sides together, and there's a slit in the side or at the bottom where once you get it all sewn in at the top, you reach in through the hole in the lining and pull everybody out. And also you've had the handles on it before then as well, so everything turns out really nicely. And then you sew up the little slit that you made for pulling everything through, and then you top stitch all the way around the outside, and it looks very nice. Well, that's not how they did it. They did it actually backwards. And the weirdest part was the handle. And it's almost like they missed a step, because what they had you do was make the handle and then sew the handle on the outside of the bag at the top, and only on one side. They didn't say anything about the other side ever again. It's like something was missing in the instructions. And I have found this with Sweet Pea lately on several of their patterns that I've done, that they have left something out or they've got some of the information screwed up. I wrote to them about those things and said, usually your patterns are very clear, but it's almost like you cut and paste some of the similar instructions from one project into another project and no one proofread it. They are minor things, although this isn't minor with this. So I'm looking at their picture. They have pictures, and they show the handle goes on both sides, but they don't show or say anything about sewing the other end of the handle. So first of all, when I sewed it, well, if you bring it up over, and if you were to sew it to the outside.
Did they have it at another step after they put the lining in?
No. Oh. That's I went through and looked at it. That's why I was thinking, well, maybe they're doing it after the fact. No. So what I had to do was, first of all, I sewed it on wrong, because I did it on the same side, the same way as I did the other side, which none of this probably makes a lot of sense unless you can see it. But needless to say, what I had to do was unsew that part, and I had to kind of bring the strap around and under the bag and over to the other side so I could sew it there. So when you flipped it back over, the handles were sewn on the inside of the bag. It's the most awkward thing I've ever seen in my life.
Hmm.
Do it. But I thought, well, I'll follow their instructions. And then you put the lining in. Okay. The lining went inside the bag, not turned inside out and the bag stuffed down like I mentioned before. Well, that sort of works, except your handle's in the way, because usually you tuck your handle in between the lining and the other. It did get tucked sort of when it came back out. It did work, but it was very, very awkward. And then the biggest problem was the opening. The opening is not very big. This will only fit one regular size wine bottle, a 750 milliliter. You wouldn't be able to get anything fatter in it. And when you had to sew, do the top stitch around, I don't have a free arm on my machine, but even if you had a free arm, I don't think your free arm would have fit in this bag. It is so tiny and cramped. And so it was a real pain in the butt to try and do it. It looks okay, except that some of the lining is popping up from the top. Nothing I could do about that when I was
actually, it doesn't look very finished.
No, it looks rough.
And I don't know, by the number of problems that you had putting it together, I'd say it's a big pass.
Yeah. Well, I will never do one of these ones again.
I've done a wine bag myself, but I just did it out of I took a regular bag. I just actually sort of did it out of my head based on how I do other bags, right? And if you know how to make a bag and you're used to making a bag, then just modify whatever bag pattern you have to the size of a wine bag. Take a paper bag and measure it of a wine bag, and then convert it to whatever you're used to. And actually, that's the way I do it.
And like I said, this particular design could easily be done on a domestic sewing machine, doing it the way you normally do a tote bag. But this was an in the hoop project, and that's why I wanted to try it. So I do not recommend it, and I have a feeling that's why this particular design was on sale, because the instructions are not well written with it at that one point. Up to that point, they're very well written, but they're very easy. It's very straightforward what you're doing. But it was the assembly of the bag and the way they did it with the lining. So do not recommend this one at all. Like Walter said, you can easily make a wine tote just by paring down what you would do if you made a regular tote. Just make it smaller.
Yeah.
That's all you have to do. Or like I had done at Christmas time, don't only use a couple of the panels from a larger tote bag in the hoop and put those there. It works too. So yeah, but I thought I'd give it a try. Also, I did not like the handles at all.
No.
That I had a lot of trouble with the handles. You see, this has Insulbright in it in place of batting, which Insulbright is a type of batting, except it has sort of like an aluminum shiny part that's an insulator, right? And that's in the bag bottom. But they also call for a piece of batting when you were making the handle, because you made the handle in the hoop as well. And that was one of the problems I had with it, because what they want you to do is then take it off the hoop when all the strips have been sewn down, fold it in half with the right sides together, sew a seam half an inch in. I wouldn't have done. I know that was half an inch, and there was like I did everything for the cutting, and they had in there. I think it should have been more like a quarter of an inch.
Yeah.
Or they should have made this piece a little wider, because when you fold it over and you've got batting in there too, so you sew it down. Then they say pull the tube the right side out. Well, I've pulled tubes before, okay, but this one, no matter what I tried, I could not get it to go. It was just too bloody thick. I finally did. I finally got it to work, but I was jamming it like crazy, and you shouldn't have had to do that much work with it. And it's just, it still looks kind of crappy as a handle. So, and they want you to have it, you know, so that the seam was underneath in the handle, and you had this.
Yeah, I've made other handles out of cloth that you didn't have to pull through.
Yeah.
And yeah, you end up having a little bit of a seam on the side, but I mean, it's not that noticeable on a handle.
No. And I would have done the hand if I had done this the regular way. The way I make handles is I'll still use batting in it, but you take a wide enough piece and you fold half of it into the center, the other half into the center, fold it over,
Yeah, on the
do a
bags
seam.
that I do, I use a 4-inch strip
Yeah.
of fabric, however long, and I put about what's that, a one or 1.5 inch, I think a 1 inch strip of batting or something in the center, like usually fusible, if I can, down the strip, down the center,
Yeah.
and fold them into each other, and then just fold them over, and you have about a 1 inch handle.
Yeah.
And then I sew all the way down the middle of it so
Yeah.
that it secures it.
Or you use webbing.
Yeah, or you use
Even
webbing.
even easier. But I
I
mean,
mean, but if you want handles to match your bag,
yeah, if you
so
want something a little bit more decorative, because webbing is usually, although they do have some webbing that are very decorative now, but usually it's just nylon and it's, one color kind of a thing. But nevertheless, it's just, I don't know what they were thinking, whoever designed this. I'd like to see how they did it. And I don't think this one had a video.
well, it almost sounds like it's somebody that doesn't have any bag making experience.
Well, I did it. I thought it was going to be a quick bag. When I saw the instructions, I thought, oh, shoot, I'll be able to rattle this off in an hour or so. Oh, no. No, no, no. There was cursing, there was swearing, the whole bit. But I was going to see it through to its bitter end so I could tell you what not to buy. Do not buy this pattern. Not worth the effort whatsoever. Okay, so that's enough about that. So, do you have anything to show? No.
No, I don't.
Walter's
Yeah,
going
I
to.
did. I put up 2 lights and dimmer
Yeah,
switches.
yeah. I have a new light here in my sewing room. Well, I have a lot of lights in the sewing room, but I had a track light up there before, and we went to Costco, and Walter saw this light, and it was a good price, and he wanted it for his sewing room, and I thought, yeah, about time, because basically his sewing room is like going into a dark cave, for many
Yeah,
reasons.
the light in my sewing room, the ceiling light, was never very bright in there, even though it had 260-watt bulbs in it. But then I saw these and decided to get one, and actually it's a lot brighter in my room now.
Yeah, and it's a lot brighter in here too, and
But it's
it's
so bright that I said, when I turned on the light and it was full brightness, I thought, oh, it's too bright for me. So I mean, it's great if you're sewing, because you can see everything. But if I'm just sitting in the room, I don't want it that bright. So I bought a dimmer switch to go in. But oh my God,
yeah,
I
this was
had
a
a
2 day
I
job.
had a I spent 2.5 hours trying to get the stupid thing in, and then once I got it in, it wasn't working. Um, and um, and mainly because there were so many wires inside the box that I wasn't used to. And it had been a long time since I last put a dimmer switch in. So anyway, I did my homework and figured out what I did wrong, and
Okay, it
fixed it
works
up
now.
2 days later.
Yeah. So he didn't have as many problems when he put mine in earlier today.
Yeah,
And now all of my lights can be run by Echo. And here, if I say her name too loud, she'll get mad at me. Whereas before there was a track light there, and I had I could turn every other light on by just telling the smart device to turn them on, but I couldn't turn that one on. But now I can, so I'm very happy with it, and it gives me so much more light to work with. Because can you have too much light in your sewing room? I don't think so. I mean, holy crap! And here are the number of lights that I've got. No wonder our hydro bill
luckily
went up.
for LEDs.
Was that? Yes. Yeah, they don't give off heat.
No,
So,
not only that, they use a lot less power.
yeah, yeah. But anyways, we're all very happy about that. Okay, so coming up, Sewing with Stephanie and Steven on Wednesday as usual, 9 a.m. start. Links in the show notes. And pop-up sew day, not this Saturday coming, but March the 8th, a week from this Saturday coming at the time of recording this. So March the 8th, starting at 8 a.m., running until 5 p.m. Walter will not be joining us. He has his own sew day to go to. That's why I'm having it on that day. I don't like competition. And you'll all be Googling him and everything. Oh, Walter, he's so dreamy. Yeah, whatever. No counting for taste, I guess. But yeah, so March the 8th, all are welcome. Come and go as you please. And the link for it, as I said, will be in the show notes starting next week in all my videos. It is not in the show notes for this one. It will be in Chatty's show notes. Say that fast 5 times. Next
She
week.
sells, she
Yeah, yeah.
sells by
And those of you on the mailing list will get a special invitation, as always. Okay, that's what's coming up. I had some other things that have happened in the past week, but those I'll talk about next week on my usual programs. So let's jump into the next part of the tote bag making in the hoop. And today is part 3, and I have a little video showing you how to stitch up the side panels. There are 3 panels for the front, 3 panels for the back of the bag. They are all the same panels, so you're making 2 of each. 2 center panels, which you saw last week, and the wing pieces, the 2 side panels that go on either side. Now, basically, you sew those the same way as you sewed the centerpiece, and you do the back all the same way. So there's not much really to show you, but I have a short little video, runs about 11 minutes long, showing the process in fast time of sewing one of the side panels. So I'm going to insert that right here, and when we come back, we're going to talk about what we're going to do next. So now we've created the 2 center panels, one for the front and one for the back. And we're going to carry on using the same procedure for the left panel and the right panel. And we need 2 of each of those. And the instructions are pretty much the same. And here they show the layout of what the quilting is going to be like. So I have my hoop already placed in my embroidery machine. I've called up the pattern, and I'm about to lay down a piece of batting, of battleizer, let it do the tack down stitch for that, trim it with my applique scissors, all the same way that I did with the center section, and then we're going to sew the various pieces of the fabric as we did here, and I'm going to coordinate them. I'm going to use the same fabrics, and I'll carry on making the left side and the right side panels. I will record a little bit of this process as we go along and fast forward it, but if you've watched the first video, you've already seen the procedure. It's exactly the same. So I have my black thread loaded. I have my battleizer on my hoop, and the hoop has been filled with no-show mesh, 2 layers of that. So we're going to trace out the tack down line or stitch line for the batting. And then when that's done, we'll take it off and we'll trim it using our applique scissors, just as we have with the centerpiece. Now, I did load my bobbin thread in here, and I took out my white one, which I usually use, and I put in a red bobbin that I wound. So I can see when the time comes to sew all the panels together, I'll be able to see more clearly that line on the back of the piece in order to line the pieces up correctly. And that'll make sense when we get to that stage. But we're a ways from that stage now. Now this is a left panel, and as I said before, we'll need 2 of those. This says it's going to take about 46 minutes to stitch out in its entirety. In reality, it'll probably take more like an hour, because the machine doesn't take into consideration the time it takes for you to trim these pieces and to change your thread colors. So there, it has finished this. So I'm going to take it off the machine, leaving everything though in the hoop, and I'm going to trim all the way around close to that line using my applique scissors. So now we're going to put down the placement line for the first piece of fabric. And this is going to be the left side of the bag. So it really doesn't have to match the fabric that's already in the center panel. You can put whatever you want, because actually this piece that's going to go here is a little bigger than the 2 pieces that are next to it. It'll make sense when you see it go together. So I can put here anything that I want. So I've just carried on with doing the same routine, just stitching out the placement line for the piece of fabric, laying the fabric on it and doing the tack down line and trimming it. And that will be the procedure for the rest of this panel until I get to the quilting. So also a reminder that we want to leave at least a ½ inch of fabric in the edges or in the seams around all these pieces that come off the batting. That way when we trim it up, we'll have the proper seam allowance. So I'm going to carry on with this. I'm going to trim this piece, I'm going to put the other pieces on, etc. And I'll come back when it's time for the quilting. Okay, so now I'm going to start the quilting in each square, and I'm using the same color thread that I used on the center panel, and I'm going to do the same color in all of these pieces, even though the design, the quilting design, will be slightly different, and that's okay. You are free, as I said when I did the center pattern, to pick a different color for each one of these blocks. It all depends on the look you want, what you're going for. One thing I want to mention is I had forgotten to take out my red, oops, get in the camera, my red bobbin, which I only needed for the first time it went right around this design, so I'll be able to easier or more easily see the points that I need to line up when I sew the panels together on my domestic sewing machine. But that's okay. I've taken it out now and that's fine. I could probably leave it in all the time, but I don't want to. Just in case for some reason my tension went off in one spot and my bobbin thread came up to the surface. If it's the white bobbin thread and that happens, then it won't be that noticeable. I don't imagine I'm going to have that problem, but just in case. So yeah, you only want to use a different color bobbin thread when you do the first initial tack down line of the batting. After that, you can put in your white bobbin and away you go, or whatever color you happen to be using. So now we're going to let this start doing the quilting on here. And so this is going to take a bit of time. We still have, it says 40 minutes left in this design. And yeah, because after it gets the quilting done in each one of these sections, then we're going to do the sashing stitch, satin, sorry, not sashing, satin stitch along each of the seams as well. And we're going to stick to the same color scheme that we used in the center panel. So I'm going to let this go for a while, and I'll fast forward a bit and put maybe on a little music in the background. It's sort of, what do they call those things? ASMR or whatever it is. Enjoy. So we have finished the quilting, and now we're going to go into the satin stitch on the seams. And I'm using the same color as I used in the center panel, and all the seams will be this color as well. Again, you could have different colors for each satin stitch pattern.
but I've decided to use one just to keep it all coherent. And also, it cuts down on the number of changes I have to make with the thread color. And just for your information, right now my machine is saying it's going to take 11 minutes to complete this part of the process, which in reality is going to take probably more like 20 minutes. But we're coming to the almost to the end of this particular panel. Okay, so now I've got one of the side panels done, and I'm going to take it out of the hoop and I'm going to trim it a 1/2 inch all the way around that outside line. I'm going to trim using my By George trimmer first the stabilizer, or the the words fail me. The stabilizer that's on here as well, and that one will be done. I need to make another one like this, and then I may need to make 2 more right panels. This is the left panel. I need to make 2 right panels as well. And then all the panels for this bag are done. So I'm not going to show you on camera doing the other panels because they're exactly the same method that's used to do this one and the center panel. And so we'll just move on in the next series of videos on creating the other elements of the bag.
Okay, so I hope that was a good refresher for you on how to put all the patchwork together. Now we're going to move into how do you put all the panels together to make the front and the back of the bag body. We're not doing the bottom yet. We're not going to do that till next week. And we have leather, faux leather actually, that we bought to do that with. And it'll be the first time we've actually worked with faux leather, so that'll be interesting to see how that works out. But we want to show you now how you put the panels together and some tips and tricks for doing it. Now, if you saw the video we did on the Kindred Creatures, the tile piece, wall hanging, actually you match up your pieces in very much the same way. So we're going to switch cameras and show you that. So what you see right here are the panels. Now there's another set of these because there's a front and a back, but we're just going to worry about these 3 right now. And in fact, we're only going to worry about the center panel and one of these panels, because once I show you how to sew these 2 together, it works the same way with this one and the rest of the bag. So we'll put that to the side. And I'm going to flip this panel over. And I want you to see if Walter can get in here. There is a red line of stitching all the way around the perimeter of this. Now, if you remember back in the Kindred Creatures one, we had this same line, but we didn't have it in a different color because we usually use a white bobbin in everything that we do. Well, the back of this is white. And the white thread, when you're trying to match it up, you can't really see it all that well. So one of my subscribers suggested that we use a different color bobbin when you come to this part of it, so you can see it. And that, I think, is a brilliant suggestion, and I don't know why we didn't think of it before. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this piece, turn it over, same red line right there instead of, sorry, we're not going to turn that over. We're going to leave that face down. Actually, we can do it this way. We'll leave the centerpiece face down. It doesn't really matter which one. And we're going to turn this one over so right sides are together. And I'm going to turn this so that I can pin it. I'm going to take some pins. And if you look right here, if Walter can get this in the camera, You see where the stitches intersect this corner? I'm going to put my pin right through that corner, and I'm going to find the white stitch line that's on the right side of this piece, which is the same as the red. And I'm going to put that needle pin right there in the corner. And then, and I'm using my felt pressing mat because I find it is a great mat for matching things up, or for, pinning things in. It's like a giant pin cushion. I'm going to put a pin in the corner here of the red line, and then we're just going to bring it over, and I'm going to try to keep it. Actually, I'm not going to do that one first. I was going to say you shouldn't do that first. Yeah, we're going to go to the bottom. This would make more sense, and do that. Put the pin in the corner, and find the corner of the outside white line, stitch line. And nice fit. Now, don't worry about this having to match that curve. It doesn't matter with this. So I'm going to put in some clips, not taking out the pins yet. And you want to make sure your pins are relatively straight up and down.
Yeah, if you put them crooked, then your lines might not line up.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to use a lot of clips. Now, could you use pins instead? Yes, you could. Whatever you're most comfortable with. But I am most comfortable with... Now, here, just for added security's sake, I have a corner here in the red. And I'm just going to stick it straight down and into the white sew line there. And put a clip in there. And as I said, don't worry about this.
Yeah, because I don't think that curve has to match the other curve in the centerpiece.
No, it doesn't. And yeah, I'm just making sure I put the right panel on the right side of it. And just put in a clip there. And maybe one more down here for security. And then you can take your pins out carefully. And we're going to take it to the sewing machine. And what we're going to do is we're going to sew just on the inside of this red stitch line, but not all the way around. We're only going to stitch from, actually, we're only going to stitch one line right here.
Yeah, all the way down, because if you stitch across the bottom, it'd have a problem.
Yeah. So I'm going to take it to the sewing machine, and Walter's following me here. I have loaded my sewing machine, as I did with the Kindred Creatures, with invisible thread. That way, if I go off, no one's going to see it. It'll be fine. I've put in whatever foot you're most comfortable with. I'm using my 1/4 inch foot because it's the one that's on here, and I know how to line it up. And all I'm going to do is, now with on the 1/4 inch foot, I'm going to line up this inside part of the foot right with the red line. It's just on the outside of that red line, because you want your needle position to be just a stitch, just the width of the thread on the inside here. And let's drop it. And away we go. Now I'm watching my needle to make sure I'm keeping it, relatively close and straight. And for some reason, I've lost my line. Nope, there it is. Now, okay, we'll open it up, and there you go. And that's looking pretty good, because if you see this up here, it pretty much is matched straight up to it. And down here at the bottom, it's off a little bit, but it's not enough to worry about. with it. And the reason we went inside that line is so you do not see this white line that's up here that you can see, but down here you do not see it. And this one's fairly easy. You don't have to really worry about matching up these pieces, although they will a little bit, but if they're off, it doesn't matter because this is patchwork and none of these pieces really go together as a continuous part. So then you're going to take it over to the ironing board, or to your iron pressing station. And for this one, you do want to press your seams open. And yes, you do have a fairly large seam here because before we were told to cut it 1/2 inch all the way around. And that's okay. That just makes things a little stronger. I give it a little steam as I do this. Now the reason we're pressing it open is because once the lining is in here, you want this to lay as flat as you can get it, and you don't want a lot of bumps and bulges poking through the lining of the bag. And for this particular pattern, this is pretty easy to do. Okay. So I won't bother doing it now, but it's the same technique with the other piece on the other side. And then we take the other 3 pieces for the back and do the same thing again, and we've got the body of our bag completed. Okay, so you saw how easy that is to put the pieces together. The more of these kind of projects you do, the better you get at it, lining it up, because you know what to do then. But again, review of the tips and tricks. When you have one of those outside lines, on this particular pattern, they sewed that first. On other patterns, it's the last one they sew. So whichever it is, make sure you stop the machine when you come to that. Replace your bobbin with a different color that you're going to be able to see easily on the back of it, and that's going to help you line it up much easier than if you just leave it as a white or whatever color. And by the way, if you miss that step, if you forget and you go, oh, forgot to change the bobbin color, not a big deal. You can just go back to the start of that. You don't have to rip anything out. Put in your different colored bobbin and just do it again. It's very forgiving.
Or if you're like me, you forget it, and then you take it all the way out of the hoop,
and then you're screwed. Well,
now,
you're not
what
really
you could
screwed,
do
but
is you can take a pen and
yeah,
trace around it.
You could darken it
to darken that.
if it's difficult for you to see.
Yeah.
It may not be difficult for you to see.
I found on this pattern it's not as difficult to see
No.
as on the Kindred Creatures one.
Yeah, that one was a harder one to see, but this one isn't so bad. But it depends on the pattern, depends on your eyesight, depends on what gets you through this. Do what you want to do for it, which this is just a suggestion for ease. And use the pins first for lining it up. Don't just try to line it up visually and then just put clips or pin it down. It won't be right. It'll go off. Ask me how I know, because that's how I did it. When the very first time I had to do any of these, because I didn't know any better, because nobody told me. And actually, I don't know where I came up with the idea. I mean, I'm sure it's not original to me, but I think I saw somebody was doing something completely different. And we're talking about lining up their patchwork pieces using a pin on things like this. It works. And then clip it, take the pins out. And as Walter mentioned to you in the video, make sure your pins are straight. Because if you're going in at an angle and that, then it's going to go skewed.
Yeah, because I found that on Kindred Creatures. I had a couple of pieces that didn't line up properly, and I realized my pins weren't directly straight in there, so they'll shift.
Yeah. And if able to, press your seams open. Now, in some cases, when you're doing one of these patterns, it may be just easier to do them to one side. And if that's what it is, that's great. Just press them well so that if you have a lining in those cases, you're not going to have a big bulge hanging out on it. If you can do it, whatever works the best, the easiest. All right, so as I said, next week we're going to work on, I think we're going to work on the bottom of the bag and possibly the handles for this. Now, we may deviate a little from the way they say to do the handles. I'm thinking of doing it in a way that actually Adam Sews does it, where he uses the nylon webbing, but he uses it inside the handles. So they're covered in the fabric, but it gives it more strength. And I like that idea, and I may attempt that too. It's not difficult. It's basically the same way as if you just had batting in there, but instead of batting, you're using the webbing down that. Or I suppose you could use a combination because webbing isn't that thick. So I don't know. We'll see. That may be an experiment for next week. And then after that, the week after that, we'll do the lining and the final assembly of the bag, and we'll have it all done. Now we are working on the bottom, as I said, with faux leather that we've bought. We have never worked with faux leather before. We do have Microtex
Actually, I'm not
needles.
sure if you really need to put a lining in those
Handles.
because faux leather has a backing on it as well. It may be
Are you talking about the handles? You're talking about the bottom.
the handles.
I wasn't going to make the handles out of the leather, but I suppose we
Oh,
could.
that's what I was thinking.
Oh,
of
you were
making
thinking of
it, yeah.
doing? Oh, okay. Well, maybe you make yours out of leather and I make mine using the webbing inside the thing. Maybe we'll
Yeah.
see. That's an idea. Then we have two types and we can show everybody.
Well, inside what were you going to use?
That I was going to use. I thought the batting with the nylon, but I'm thinking that might make it too thick. What's the point?
Oh, okay.
With the nylon webbing, I don't know yet whether I'm going to do that or just strictly. I think all Adam did was just use the fabric around the.
Oh, so you were going to use fabric, make fabric handles.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
reinforced with nylon. Where were
Yeah.
you?
Okay. No. I
part
see.
of
I
the
was
story, actually?
thinking you were going to put the batting or the nylon webbing inside the faux leather.
No,
Oh, okay.
but but you're talking about. Let's make this confusing, shall we? So, let us pull this apart a little bit more logically. We are talking about handles right now. I was thinking of doing it with nylon strapping and then the fabric covering it on the outside. You're thinking of making your handles from the faux leather, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you do you. I'll do me. And our bottom, we're going to do out of faux leather. Now, this is where I don't know whether or not, traditionally what I usually do when I make a tote is I will use soft and stable with my bottom to give it a little bit more structure and support so the bag will stand up nicer.
I usually use Peltex.
Same diff. You know, it's a foam, a thin foam kind of thing. But I don't know if I need that with the faux leather.
I don't know if I can iron on that faux leather.
Oh, we didn't think about that. Ooh, that could be a problem. Yeah, with a pressing cloth, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
We may have to take a little piece and try and see what happens.
Maybe look up, see if how other people do it.
Yeah, because I don't know what faux leather's made out of.
Well, it's probably a type
Is it
of
just
vinyl.
a vinyl? Yeah, so
It may melt.
Might melt. Didn't think about that, did we? No. Well, we're thinking about it now before it's a disaster. So, ooh, next week could be full of lots of fun things here that we didn't really intend to have. But anyway, so I don't know whether I'm going to use now soft and stable in the bottom or not. And we are going to use Microtex needles. Because why?
Why? I don't know. I just read that that's what you're supposed to use when you're using faux leather.
I think they're a little finer needle, aren't they?
Yeah, supposedly the shaft is a little skinnier.
Yeah, or whatever.
So it doesn't give you as big a hole.
Yeah, okay, that happens. Yeah. So we're going to learn a lot of things here as we think about
Well,
it
not
now.
only that, I would imagine it works for just like leather. You cannot unsew vinyl.
No, because you'll have holes.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure you got it right the first time. That might be a problem for me. We'll see. We'll see. So lots of adventures coming up next week. So that's on next week's edition of So Chatty. Okay, anything else you want to say?
Nope.
Okay, then I think...
need to get working on my bag because I only have a middle panel and half of a set.
Yeah, we'll get the lead out. So we'll carry on with our little project here next week and see what happens. And we'll see you next week as well. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.